Da-da-da-da-da-dum. Welcome to another episode of Unleashing the Future of Work, a guide live podcast. I'm excited because today I'm joined by a few rock star guests. The first one being a really great friend of mine and just like an awesome being. I was about to say human being, Aubrey Blanche. Aubrey Blanche is the Mathpath, which is math nerd plus empath. She's the director of equitable design and impact at Culture Amp and a startup advisor, investor, and a worldwide speaker. She speaks every freaking other week, it seems like, based on her Twitter. And through all her work, she seeks to question, reimagine, and redesign the systems and practices that surround us to ensure that all people can access equitable opportunities and build a better tomorrow. She is my type of woman, and she's just fantastic at everything she does. And today we're going to dive deep on her background in equitable design, a lot of the work that she's leading with Culture Amp, and some of the work that they've actually recently just announced that they're doing to ensure that they remain anti-racist. And more importantly, they're creating an equitable and inclusive workforce. So I'm excited to dive deep on her because we're going to dive deep on her background, all the amazing things that she's doing, and some of the things that she's noticing currently right now in the technology arena. Aubrey, hey.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here to chat about all the things. It also feels so weird right in this moment to like talk about me and my journey, but I'm hoping that like what people get from it is like I can do the thing too. Like it's not like I'm some special superhero who's like done something that's so out of reach of everybody else. I've just been really focused and intentional. And so I don't know. We'll get into details, but also I'm really grateful that you're having me on. I feel like you have this joy that you bring to things and this like motivation that even when I'm having like a shit day or I need just a little bit of like, I need to keep going energy, you're always such like affected in that. And so I'm really appreciative for the energy that you put out because I think there's a lot of us that get a lot from that and don't always have the opportunity to tell you directly. So.
Oh, Aubrey, thank you so much. From one designer to another, I really appreciate you for that. And, you know, it's such a compassionate thing for you to say. So thank you, because we get a lot of energy from you, okay?
I'm glad. I feel like I've been like salty and fired up for the last 2 months. And I'm actually like a Pollyanna optimist. I think you have to think that you can be like, fuck systemic racism and, you know, fuck the patriarchy. But yeah, I think it's right. We all help each other and we get through it together, which is the point.
Yeah, agreed. So I want you to dive deep with us. You know, tell me about how did you get into the work that you do, and because you've had a really dynamic career. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think like the answer to how did I become an expert in equitable design, like I don't want to say I invented it because there's lots of brilliant people who are thinking about this sort of intersection of disciplines. But I think for me, both it was completely by accident in that I've hit a lot of like aggressive barriers in my life that I now know are very much like, we're much more likely because I'm Latina and because I grew up, you know, I was born low income, you know, first gen from a college perspective, female, queer, all of those things. But for me, I've always also had like the parallel privilege to find alternative ways to do stuff when I hit that wall, which is not a set of options or support that everybody has, right? So for me, like the idea of moving into equitable design is where I am personally in my life is like, I can't imagine doing something else. Yeah. Like looking at the world and knowing that I personally, so I was adopted when I was little by a family that is white in many respects. Not all of them. My dad is Indigenous and like has been an Indigenous activist, so it's not quite the same, but all of us passed for white. So we have a very specific experience of race and racialization in my family. And I think about the fact that I was educated at Northwestern and Stanford, which are both deeply colonized and also really important elite signaling tools and teach you how to work within systems of power. I think about having worked at some of the most influential companies in the world, which led me to learn about business models and how companies work and how capitalism operates. I'm an investor, so I understand how that works. And so for me, really equitable design is taking everything I've learned across a very kind of trip and fall into it career, I started college as an opera major. I got a journalism degree. I worked as a journo. I was an academic political scientist. I went to tech BD because I needed a paycheck, and now I'm a chief diversity officer. Like, okay,
Yeah.
that happens to someone who isn't me.
But I think that's how careers are supposed to go.
It makes sense to me, right? Like each of the skills I had before this particular version of my career, I'm incorporating. But what I really am trying to do is take this like intersection of design thinking and universal design, sort of agile as a methodology to move things, systems analysis, and then social justice theory. And like, how do we put this together with what we know about psychology and organizational theory and all of that? How do we use it as a way to actually move systems to be better? Because I think right now what we've had is we have this incredibly rich history of like social justice theory about like how the world could work and how the world could be. But what we're lacking is like a complete set of structures. We have a lot of this, but not all of it, about how to move those structures to be in line with those philosophies. And I think that's what I think about equitable design is we all have unique activism. We can all design each of our interactions or actions to either create more or create less equity. And I'm trying to teach people how to like go to the second one. So if you're a CEO, there's a lot more that you have to do versus if you're a frontline worker. There's always something.
Yeah, it's so powerful that you say that. One of the things that I love about the work that you share on Twitter and all other platforms as well is that you always focus on the accountability that leaders have within organizations, as well as the influence that they have to really think about it from the ground up. And even for us, as we're building Guide, from day one, we've thought about inclusion and equity in everything we do in terms of our advisory board, how we're raising capital. And it's so sad. And when I look at large enterprise organizations, that is completely not a mainstay in day-to-day practice.
Well, and I think it's quite frankly really simple, because a lot of the people who are given the access and capital to start organizations, like, I say don't have to, in the sense that like there is nothing crushing their soul if they don't give a fuck about people who are like them on a day-to-day basis. Now, I would actually argue that it is diminishing their humanity in a lot of ways, and that that's harmful to them too. But I don't want to center that harm when there's more specific harm that we need to rectify. But yeah, for me, I'm a human who gets angry and like has all the regular emotions. But I think my focus on accountability comes from a desire to be compassionate. I don't believe that we show people compassion by enabling them to harm themselves and others. And so I hope, and I fail sometimes, and I've gotten checked on it, which I appreciate the trust that people have to bother to correct me. Like, you can hold accountability in a kind way, and people may receive that as problematic, but you have to think, did I actually do harm? So a lot of what I tell leaders is they go, I feel really impotent, to make a change. And I go, it's great that you feel that way, but you're actually not. So I want to respect and hold space for that feeling, but just because your feeling is real doesn't mean it's true.
Let me ask you, who have been some of the leaders that you are looking at right now with the current landscape of things, everything that's been happening in terms of how organizations are adapting into trying to be more intentional after, the killings of George Floyd, as well as the Black Lives Matter movement and protest? Who have been some of the leaders that you've been really looking at saying, oh, those are great examples of how we really, be proactive about this work?
Yeah, so I would say like thinkers, like there's like the Audre Lorde, James Baldwin like list that everybody would say that they've read, or hope if they're in this work. Personally, I've been looking to a lot of Chicana feminists, so trying to understand my role as like a person of color, also a person of color who's white passing, who is indigenous from multiple lines of my family, but is trying to learn how to be an ally to like crush anti-Blackness, right? Like my personal intersection is complicated and confusing. So for me, going back to the history of activism within my own community has been really important to help me ground and validate how I'm trying to lead in this moment and figure it out. People like day to day right now, when I think about people like, I think Michelle Kim and Ellen Pao, the way that they are showing what it looks like to show up for your community and lead them in this work so focused on especially Asian folks in tech, has been really influential to me. I think about like people who are my friends, but who I look up to, like LeBron Davis, Rachel Williams at X. Like I actually don't know how as a human I got so lucky to like have these people as personal connections, but also some of the wisest, like most patient, most brilliant people I've ever met. Thinking like Candace Morgan, who was at Pinterest and is now at GV. And then I think about people like Nicole Sanchez, who's been doing this work for decades. And I feel like every time she talks, I learn a new way to think about it. And I like hope that I get to be as badass as she is.
I feel like you're already there. I want to show love to our amazing audience and community who's currently tuning in right now. Shout out to Mrs. Tetsubayashi, who is also an equitable design advocate. She is snapping her fingers at you and all of the things that you're saying.
Oh, that's to be in the same club.
Data, if you have any questions, please feel free to add them in the comments. Also, shout out to my boy Aziz. He's saying that's great. We need to care and show compassion. It's 100% true. Aziz is also saying that he loves your energy or our energy. So he's definitely feeling the joy right now in this moment. In addition to that, shout out to my boy Edward, who's tuning in from Africa. We're in Africa. Let us know, Edward. Is it Niger? Is it Ghana? Let us know. Let us know, Edward. And more importantly, if you're tuning in right now and you're enjoying this lovely conversation with the amazing Aubrey Blanche, please show us some love. Let us know where you're tuning in from. What questions do you have around equitable design? What are you excited about? What do you think we can do to hold leaders more accountable and actually change and transform what's going on right now? I want to also ask you, because one of the things I really think is powerful about you, Aubrey, is how you really communicate.
Yeah, those I talk a lot, so I'm glad it works.
It works. And I want to ask you, for you, is it been because you've been in so many different rooms that you're able to really bring clarity and simplicity to when it comes to this conversation?
I think what it is like I'm working on this whole theory about something I'm calling liminal feminism, which you'll probably get like a deep, pedantic like Medium post about at some point. But really, I actually think it comes from my identity. So I was born in a particular family and adopted into a very different economic circumstance. I came from a family that had a lot of trauma in the system, to one where I got incredible community and mental health support. I'm a woman of color who's been racialized as Mexican American, but I'm white passing. I'm queer, but I can pass for straight.
Wow.
And so I think that like I am a translator more than anything else. And it actually links into what we've talked about, like where did the Mathpath come from? And I didn't actually make it up. I want to talk about that process.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
But really, so I have to give a shout out to Sami Bloom and to the rest of the team at Individual, which is this branding firm I work with. But to call them a branding firm is like the most reductive and inappropriate thing. But really, finding this language called the Mathpath is what helped me understand what my role was and what I can offer. So this idea of, and I was always like, oh, I'm this math person, but I'm like a deep empath. Like I feel things at a level that like I have to manage a lot. And I think Sami, when sort of he came up with this idea of the Mathpath, or the team did, it was this validation of this like emotion that I can only explain as like, ¿por qué no los dos? Like, why not both? Like, why are we picking? And so what I think I try to do with my work and the spaces I try to put myself in are, where can I take ideas that come from the margins? And how can I take them into spaces that aren't ready for them? Because maybe if I can translate them, we can open up that space and move towards the more correct, the more pure, the more action-oriented dialogue. But like, you've got to crack things open first. And so a lot of my work is about like, how do we translate social justice, like human connection and empathy, into these purely cognitive and logical systems? So like, I can do game theory with social justice because no one said I couldn't. Yeah. And because that's how my brain works. And my hope is that can help people who optimize and experience the world in different ways to come to greater understanding of each other. Because I fundamentally believe these problems are about human beings not understanding each other. I don't believe that most humans, if they really understood the pain and the oppression and the harm that they were causing, they wouldn't do it if they really understood it. And so that's what I hope I can offer in the world, software or interactions.
Yeah, no, I think what I really I think what we all appreciate about a lot of the work that you do is that you do it from the position of scale. All right, and I think that's what goes with the Mathpath and thing, because it's like you're scaling it through software, and that's what I love. I'm like, when I always think, and I always think, because I'm thinking that a lot of people don't realize that it's relevant, it's practical, and more importantly, you're infusing so many different divergent perspectives to continue to lead this work. And I want you to touch on a little bit about some of the trends that you're seeing and why you believe technology is such a great platform, or just being in the world of software is such a great platform to really drive this work.
Yeah, I think being in software is a really interesting place, and I think being at Culture Amp in particular. So I've never joined a company where the VPs use the word organizational justice like they've been thinking about it for years, as opposed to oh, that's a lot of syllables. So in many cases, I just feel very privileged to get to work with people who have done a lot of their own work. But in other ways, we're still a firm with a lot of white people. And so therefore, the work is different. And it gets to Dr. Tetsubayashi's question in the chat. So I wanted to pull that in, which is this idea about how do we keep people accountable? Because ultimately that flows down into the software. And I think the first thing I do is I find the people who already have decided to be accountable to themselves. And I use those people to do a lot of the accountability work for their peers. So the fact is, I'm a queer woman of color who's usually one or two clicks in the hierarchy below people with chief in their title. Yeah. And even though I feel super supported by my boss, who's the CEO, the fact is, I'm not always the right person. And so a lot of this work is about figuring out who the right person to do the work is. And in many cases, I'm the maestro and not the doer.
And because you also speak the language of employee experience and human resources.
Totally. And so I think on the accountability side for executives, it's really about finding the people who can influence them and pushing accountability through that vector. When it comes to thinking about scale, the reason I think about it is I think I have a reasonably good sense about what can be done at scale and what can't. So I think that's the thing people miss out on, is they're trying to scale everything in social justice, and there's some shit that just isn't and shouldn't scale. It actually needs to happen one-on-one. It needs to happen inside, right? The book, The Inner Work of Racial Justice, is really influential to me in thinking about how much inner transformation has to happen. So, but in terms of software, I think there are just, if you take basic principles of universal design and consider intersectionality at all, you realize that actually design is just missing a lot. It's not giving a shit about enough people, and we're building harm into products. And so for me, that's a lot about what software is I can't help everybody. I really would like to, but I can't. And I think there are small ways that we can adjust software that creates huge outcomes for people in terms of their real life. So I joined Culture Amp because I believe that their products enable companies to listen and be accountable for creating change, and that the way that they're designing, this is the least, but the performance software at Culture Amp was designed considering organizational justice, and we're thinking about what that looks like in more product features. It's a conversation I have openly with VPs. And so I just imagine that this is a conversation I'm having, but if we can build some stuff that's cool and then we make money for the VCs, it becomes this thing where the VCs start going, oh, how come you're not considering that? You're not maximizing the return on our investment. I hate that I live in capitalism. I'd rather just everyone has dignity and value because they exist. But if where we are is that we need to shift those systems, how do we build the incentives in the case studies to show that it can be done differently? I think that's the theme of my life. I reject the premise that things have to be the way they are.
Yeah, no, same. And I absolutely don't even think they do. And more importantly, you know, with where technology is going, it's becoming more, we're moving towards a more social capitalistic construct, to be honest with you, with where people are going to be more empowered with how they spend their money, how they transact, how they share information. And it's going to be much more decentralized. So we are now seeing, I think, in a lot of different organizations that organizations have to start thinking critically about how are you serving a multiracial world where consumers will have much more control about how they spend money and how they want to do business and maintain a relationship with the business. So, I think that it's so timely that a lot of the work that you're leading and a movement of people are leading is the fact that it's actually, right now with everything going on in the world, it's a transition point, I believe, and where things are going. And really, you have to be at a vanguard position right now in all of it.
Yeah, and I think or at least what I hope's happening on the most macro level is that what we know, that anti-Blackness exists everywhere, colorism, racism exists everywhere, colonialism is bad.
Yeah.
And it feels to me, at least the discussions I'm having in different regions of the world, people are waking up and going, white people aren't the majority. This is optional. And yeah, I think that what I'm seeing that's exciting is I'm doing this thing.
Mm.
And the way that I think about it is my activism work doing that at whatever scale I can reach. For me, I try to work at the highest scale that I can that still feels responsible, is no more legitimate or no more important than the one conversation someone had with their racist uncle.
Mm. Mm.
Right. And that's the thing I believe, is that every little bit that we do matters, and every little bit we do has impact, and just try to keep the peripheral vision on what people in different geos and countries and around the world are doing, and how can we learn from that and continue growing, which is the very agile techie mindset of you did that, try it. But why don't we weaponize some of the things that have come out of these broken systems to actually break the system in ways that actually are better for humans.
Yeah, and recalibrate it. So I want to cap things off because Culture Amp recently announced amazing things around what you all are doing to be anti-racist and create an inclusive workforce. So I would love for you to share a little bit more of that, and also give us a takeaway of what our guide community, what they can read, what they can consume to make sure that they continue to be a part of your movement.
Yeah, so I would say we really great commitments. I'm really, really proud of the plan, but I also want to hold the humility that we haven't executed it yet. All of it. We're rolling on a lot. But if folks want to check it out, it's cultureapp.com/anti-racism. And so what we did initially after, sort of the video went viral of George Floyd being murdered, was, like a lot of companies, we put out a statement. But when we put out that statement, we didn't focus on making large donations. We actually focused on explaining what we were doing to support our folks internally. Because for us, that was the highest priority, we call our employees campers. And I love it. I just want happy campers. But really the first priority for us was, what do our Black campers need at this moment? And so that was the first pillar of our strategy, is take care of your own, make sure that people are supported. And so they might not sound like huge things, but we had a direct leadership acknowledgement of the violence that was happening, and the way that all of us have been complicit, either just by virtue of not saying anything or not knowing. But it was something that we are committing to rectifying. We just sent a note. We're call in Black. It's fine. Don't put it in the HRIS. Just ping your manager so they know where you are, but take time to recover, recognizing that folks are traumatized and continue to be so. We engaged an incredible professional. His name is Anthony Ware, running what he calls mental wealth, sort of a mental health and wellness program for our Black employees. So not only are you okay in this moment, but how are we as a company explicitly investing in you building the skills and tools that you need to have resilience and to be well over the long term. And once we did that, right, so make sure, not just it's put the mask on yourself, put the mask on your people first, make sure that they're okay. And then we started to look at our longer term strategies. So the rest of the strategy really has 3 pillars. The first is accountability. So what does it look like to take accountability? And we sat down with the whole executive team, I put together sort of a new strategy that was much more aggressive and focused on anti-racism. And I think what we as a team agreed is that we're not an anti-racist organization. We haven't done all of the actions that would be necessary for us to call ourselves that. So what we're saying is we're dedicated to becoming and evolving to be one. And here's the work that we're doing as phase one to get there. So I think that's important. Is it's not appropriate for us as like a white founded organization to be like, we are anti-racist.
Yeah.
The best we can do is say we're intending and here's the actions that we're taking, and then provide updates as we're going about, are we actually executing this? And then the other piece about accountability. So all of our senior leaders are required to have anti-racism development goals going forward. And we're working with them to build those. And then we consider our success. So like there's a company level metric that we're all held to. What's really important is that metric only considers what Black employees think about what we've done. Right? Like it's not appropriate for like white people to be like, we did anti-racism good. It's appropriate for us to say we're committed to the work, to do the work, take feedback, and ask the people we're supporting if we hit the mark. Then tons and tons of education. So we have a C-level anti-racism coaching program that will be starting in September, but we're doing the preparatory work for now. A lot of thinking, assessing, discussions. Then we're releasing a manager training focused on anti-Blackness and managing cross-racial dynamics. So that's phase one for all managers, leaders in HR, and our business partner, people partner teams. So the people who are most likely to need to support Black campers in the short term. The goal of scaling that out and offering it more broadly. And then we're working with Seed and Spark to do a film-based racial justice education program with expert facilitation. And then we have two community-led initiatives. So white allies are sort of doing their own reading group, and then we have non-Black POC doing their own reading group. And then the very last item, I know this is long, but I'm excited, is opening access. So one thing we realize is that access to information is actually a core organizational justice. So our incredible technology IT team is actually refactoring and looking at all of our knowledge management practices, all of the SaaS productivity tools that we use, and is actually going to be pushing new guidance to make sure that everyone gets access to the information they need to do their job, to grow, to have a career. Because we know that when you don't look like leadership, if those practices aren't great, you don't have access, and we're like, we can solve that problem. So we're doing that. We're ripping out and rebuilding our entire global recruiting process. Wow. And then we're also, the HR team is making sure that every single one of our processes is aggressively documented and shared repeatedly ahead of any of those processes running. And we've updated and made more rigorous all of the audits we do for all of our talent processes around equity and fairness. So recruiting last, right? It's support your people, take accountability, take action by educating yourself. And then that last bucket is really the beginning of, if all of those things become true, I think we'll have taken a big step towards becoming an anti-racist organization. But to be the Mathpath for a moment, I kind of I'm really influenced by Dr. Kendi on this, who has talked about his own journey and like the types of racist beliefs that he's held and he's had to unlearn. Is I think that being anti-racist as a person and being anti-racist as an organization is an asymptotic thing. So like you get really, really, really close to it at some point, but you never actually reach it, because racism is so pervasive that there's always going to be one more thing you can do. And I don't think the inability to hit perfection is an excuse to not do good and do better. So anyway, that's what Culture Imp is doing. We're trying to be super comprehensive. We're trying to also share, because we know a lot of other companies are trying. And we hope that we can guide them as we learn.
Yeah, and just open sourcing your platform because it's rooted in
it's really simple to me, which is that, you know, if Culture Imp becomes perfect at this and totally wins, like that doesn't matter as much as all of us winning. There's no competition to be like, I mean, if someone wants competition, if we want to compete to like respect human dignity and flourishing the most, like I'm here for that.
That's awesome. So shout out to Aziz, who's saying, you're doing awesome work, Aubrey. Shout out to our guy community, Aziz. Thank you so much, my brother. Aubrey, we appreciate you. You know, what is the one powerful takeaway that you want to leave our guy community?
I think the question that I'm getting the most is like, what can I do to be anti-racist right now? And I'm like, well, number one, listen to Black people. Give them
Simple as that.
but like it doesn't feel tangible.
Yeah.
The best piece of advice I can give for someone is don't uh, don't rush to action to avoid your discomfort.
Mm.
So we often try to avoid the discomfort of like these interactions, and someone very wise told me that the learning happens in the discomfort, and so don't cheat yourself out of the learning, because without the learning you will keep replicating the systems you're trying to fix.
Mm.
And so that's what I hope. And then go, like I said, there's so much writing on the internet. Like you don't have to bother a Black person to educate you.
Yeah.
You don't have to, because Google exists. So that's the other thing I would say is like your V1 education should go online. Like go look at what's already there. And once you have a deeper knowledge set and you have an idea of like how to ask respectfully, how to build relation in a way that creates okayness for that space.
And empathy too, right?
Yeah, and build empathy. So that's the thing is own your discomfort, say thank you, discomfort. Listen to some Pema Chodron if you need help leaning back into that discomfort. I do it a lot. You'll become a better human generally, but you'll also be more equipped to be an ally to everybody, not just people from a particular group.
I love that so much, Aubrey. Thank you so much. We appreciate your presence and we love you and the movement that you're leading. So please continue to do it. Don't give up. Because you have a world of people who look at the work you're doing and get inspired from it. So thank you so much for.
I'm grateful for that.
We need to have you on a future episode.
And I feel time has been really beautifully spent. So I'm grateful for that.
Oh, thank you, Aubrey. We need to have you on a future episode, but thank you so much. Okay.
Always here to hang out. Everyone have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. Talk soon. Bye, Aubrey. And that was just our first guest on the Guide Live B2B Jam Session podcast. We're unleashing the future of work. So my next guest, oh my goodness, she doesn't even need an introduction. She's the queen of SaaS in Silicon Valley, Mrs. Mathilde Collin, who's the CEO and co-founder of Front. We're going to dive deep with her on a lot of different things, trends that she's seen in the current software as a service landscape, some of the early challenges Front had in building the company, and also what are her thoughts on the future of work and where things are going, and all of the amazing things that Front is doing to make sure they're at the forefront of that. With that said, take some tea, take a break, and we'll be right back. Talk soon. Welcome back to another episode of Guide Live B2B Jam Session. All right, so my next guest, she's a phenomenal woman, Mathilde Collins, who is the CEO and co-founder of Front, one of the hottest SaaS startups in Silicon Valley for the last 7 years now. Man, and we're going to dive deep in a lot of the work in her background and story and journey in building Front, as well as some of the early challenges that she had. In addition to that, you all are going to love this. I'm going to actually go deep with her on some of the trends that she's seen in the software as a service category, how things are changing, and also the shift that we're seeing to remote first work. And she'll probably tell you a little bit about Front and how you can use it and download it right now for your remote team or within your workforce. So with that said, let's bring on Mathilde. Hey, Mathilde.
Hello, Tim. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I mean, after an intro like this, I'm super energized.
Thank you, Mathilde. So how has everything been with you with the state of the world?
Well, that's a tough question, as you can imagine. How has it been? I think it brings a lot of things to light, both from a professional standpoint and from a personal standpoint, because you're really, in a tough situation, no matter what. So that's been good, because I'm all about, the truth to emerge and then working on the most impactful thing we can work on. So what would I say? I would say on the front side, I've been really excited about, the past few months, because I feel like when so many things are outside of your control, you really need to come back to the core of why you're doing what you're doing and what is truly working, and double down on this. And sometimes, companies can grow with like lots of externalities participating to it, and you don't really know what the core of what's super valuable is. And I think that brings like this whole situation brought this to light. So that's been good. I think in my personal life, obviously with everything going on, there's been so many sad things, but at the same time, there's been valuable things as well. And I've, for example, I've always cared a lot about work-life balance, and I feel like in this environment where you don't really have a difference between your time at work and your time at home, then you need to be even more deliberate about what it means for you to have a good balance. And I will carry that over, when everything is back to normal. Never.
Yeah, it's probably going to be never. Yeah, and I think what's so powerful about what you're saying too is new routines are being created because we not all have to now rethink how work-life balance in a remote first world.
Yes, exactly, which is good. I mean, I do believe that a lot of this is good, and that it will be lasting too.
Yeah. So I want to dive deep on, you building Front in the early days, right? What was that experience like? What were some of the roadblocks and challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome it?
Well, so at the end of the day, when you're just starting, the only thing that matters is make something people want, just making sure that you're making something people want. And I often tell this story of, I was in France when I started Front. I came to Y Combinator. Y Combinator seemed to be this extraordinary thing with amazing people, like partners. And then I went to the first dinner, and the thing that they were telling us was, well, here's the thing. You need to make something people want, and here's a T-shirt. Like, make something people want. I was like, did I really need to travel that far in order to know that that's the focus? But the reality is, what they bring is the focus. And so everything else that you're doing that's not aiming at proving to yourself and to your team that you're making something people want is like a distraction. And so the early days of Front, we were literally like only doing two things: building the product and putting the product in front of as many people as possible so that they could tell us, I will not use it because XYZ. And so then building the product, coming back to users and trying to get more users interested until you finally reach the point of a company, for us, because we're B2B and a tool for teams, that is willing to pay for your product. And so then you try to have more of them. And so when I look back at these early days, they were, really fun times, because it's very rare that in your company, the only thing you will do is just literally talking to customers and building features. Then you'll start hiring, managing communication, raising, moving offices, like everything else.
Yeah.
So we had roadblocks for sure, and I think the thing that we did well, and I do believe we are still doing today, is being very honest with ourselves first and with the team about like what is preventing us, like what is the feedback and what is preventing us from growing. And I think that there is a natural human element, which is like like I'm spending so much time building this company that I don't really want to tell myself, am I really making something people want? It's like it's pretty essential. And then there's another thing, which is you don't want to come to your team saying, well, no one is using the product. Like, we had 10 users last week, we have 9 this week, which is like, so you don't want to do that because you feel like your responsibility as a leader is to keep people motivated. Yet, I believe that anytime you're not doing this, it's a disservice to your company. And so for me, I think, what did we do when we hit blockers? Like the first thing was being honest to ourselves and to our team about that. And then, trusting us and the team in making sure that we would find solutions versus creating artificial motivation that would just be a short-term, optimization.
And really focusing on what matters. And as you mentioned earlier, the core essence, and really just shipping. And, Front has been around for 7 years now, right?
Not yet, but
soon. No, and I think one of the things I've loved about, reading the journey is the fact that you've always kind of stressed the importance of discipline. And you've actually wrote about that in a few blog articles. I want you to talk a little bit about, how you approach that, because a lot of people don't understand the importance of discipline in building a venture, especially in the early days, and then especially when you want to scale.
Yes. So, I mean, as you said, I've written about this because I think it's one of the most important things. I think there is this misconception that I had, which is your company will succeed if you have, strong product market fit and a huge market. It's not true. Like so many things can go wrong. Whereas I think with discipline, you can start with an idea that doesn't exactly have product market fit, but because you have the discipline, you'll make it pivot into something people want and scale it into something bigger. So technically what it meant was, I'm sure that if people didn't know that I was a human being and they would only receive emails and comes from me, they would think I'm a robot. But and because, since day one, I would do things like every week sending an email, like exactly the same format that would start with KPIs. Here's how we grew last week on a few metrics. This is what we just achieved. And next week, this is what we want to achieve. And I would do that all the time to hold us accountable to what we had said we would do, and also metrics we would hit. And still today, now the company is much bigger, but I could tell you so many things that we still do. Like we still send a weekly email, we have a weekly all hands, we have a quarterly all hands, we have these dashboards that we review, and to me, the thing is, so many things will go wrong or not according to plan in your company, that if you get caught into these things, and so now like it's a meeting about like this potential, acquisition or great customer or like whatever, opening a new office, and it's just like you're going like this, and I think you lose the North Star that you have. And so you can have all these other things that you're doing that's really fine, but you should make sure that the discipline you have towards yourself, your team, like everything, your time, like everything, is nailed. Because otherwise, so many reasons can make you, an undisciplined person.
Yeah, and I think be distractions, like shiny object syndrome, and we see that a lot with early stage founders, and then in early stage companies where a new opportunity, and then it takes you way off from what that annual focus was, or what the long-term vision of your product is. And I think it's so important. And every time I read about your thoughts on this, I was like, this is like gold. And because a lot of founders in the early days, they often don't come at the work with the disciplined nature. It's more so, let's get press, or how much capital can we raise, when it's about how are you validating the product? Do you have the right community? Where are you going?
Exactly. And I think it shouldn't prevent you from, doing some press or I'm chatting with you today, and then or just talking to investors, but they're a mean to an end. And I think that it's fine. Like, I think creating more awareness around your company and or raising money. But I think the mistake that we can do is think that that's what success is. Like success is about reaching that valuation or being featured in that. No, success is delivering value to your customers, which usually, like for a B2B product, can be reflected by the amount of revenue you're making. Like the reason why we track our recurring revenue all the time is because for us it's the only metric that doesn't lie. And so and that proves that we're building something valuable.
Yeah, and the source of truth. And I wanted you to dive deep a little bit on one, how you all are building that relationship with some of the marquee customers that you all have at Front. And in addition to that, who have been some of the leaders that have really inspired you in your journey in building Front?
Yeah. So building relationships with customers. So this is something where I think customer empathy and the fact that everyone in your company, starting with yourself, but really anyone in your company, should feel close to the customers, in my opinion, should be a priority at any stage. And at every stage, the processes that you have, the tools that you use are going to be different. But, at the end of the day, the reason why I'm passionate about the product that we're making, which captures customer communication, but is an email product so that everyone can access them, is because I'm convinced that the fact that, anyone from recruiting to, software engineers to support, etc., can access this information from customers, good and bad, is going to contribute to empathy, engagement, and people understanding why they're working on what they're working on. And so it starts with myself where, I have a list of accounts where I'm an exec sponsor, which means that on a regular basis, I will talk to them. But I also jump into our support queue from time to time just to make sure that I understand what, people are complaining about or raving about. And how did we manage to get these relationships? The reality is we just focused solely on making, something they wanted. And I think that's, how they can be happy with you. So the second question you asked was about how did I build relationship with?
So who have been some of the leaders that inspired you in your journey?
So on this, I would say different people at different stages of the company. In the early days, when I arrived in the US and I arrived for my interview at YC, and it was my first time outside Europe, one of the first person that I met was Patrick Collison, the CEO of Stripe. And I met him because Stripe had this email transparency policy, and so he was interested in meeting with me. I was obviously very interested in meeting with him. And so he was one of the first person that I met, and he immediately believed in the product we were making and who I was as a person. I admire Stripe so much for so many reasons, for the culture they have, for the momentum that they've managed to keep, driving more innovation over time. And so Patrick helped me a ton. And then, maybe 2.5 years ago, when we raised our Series C with our Series B with Sequoia, Brian introduced me to someone, Jared Smith, the co-founder of Qualtrics. And he became someone that I started spending way more time on, admire him because of his focus on product and genuinely an amazing human being. And so I think then Jared became someone that I became close to and really mentored me. I think at different stage of the company, probably I need help on different things. Yeah. And so I think my mentors have changed a little bit, but these are two examples of people that have been teaching me a lot of things.
One of the things you often talk about as well too in a lot of your videos and speaking engagements, it's this intentionality in making sure that you're building the right relationships with people who can help you upfront, whether it be investors or potential, leaders, thought leaders who can mentor you and help you scale your business, and being proactive in advice and mentorship. What are some of the tidbits that you have with some of the people who are currently listening within our guide community who are timid when it comes to mentorship, when it comes to, and starting a venture?
Yeah, well, so tips is first, you shouldn't have many of them. So I think you should be very focused for two reasons. I believe that people outside your company can only provide value if they know a lot about your company, which means that you have to give in order to get. And so for me, I have to spend a lot of time explaining the business if I want people to give me relevant advice. And so you can't do that with many people. And so first of all, I think that you should be very clear about who you think can help you. And but then what will most likely happen is if the person is the person for you, they will understand why. Meaning, if I have many entrepreneurs that ask me, can you help me? But I don't feel like my expertise is really something that's going to help them. Well, probably I will not do it. Versus someone where I feel like, yes, I'm probably the best person to help them. I'm a human being that has been helped in the past. Of course I want to give back, but I think I will do it if I truly believe that I can be the most helpful. Otherwise I will just feel like it's a waste of time on both sides. So my advice would be to be very, very deliberate about one or two people, why, and then making sure that you communicate to them, and then hopefully they will say yes.
I love that. That's so powerful. You know what? Thank you so much, Mathilde, for being on the show. We want to ask you, what's one powerful and core takeaway that you have for our amazing guide community?
Just a takeaway, anything in life?
Yeah, anything in life.
So, probably the thing that I care most about that's not talked about enough, in my opinion, is when people are building companies, whether they're employees, founders, CEOs, etc., they tend to care a lot, which is a really good thing. But then sometimes they tend to forget that your life is not just the company that you're working for or building. And you tend to merge your identity with the company, and you tend to your happiness tend to be dictated by how well things are going. The problem is in any professional life, there will be ups and downs, and if you tie your happiness too much to things that truly are sometimes outside of your control, you're going to be very unhappy. So one of my takeaways has been the problem is people are good at their job because they care. So you can't tell them stop caring, because that's what makes them good at their job. Instead, the only thing that they can do is be very deliberate about what's their life outside of work. So what matters to you, and so I don't know. For me, it's I need to make sure that I have time outside of work where I'm not thinking about work. I want to spend time with my husband, with my family, with I want to do sports, I want to meditate. But I know that if I just listen to myself, if I'm not disciplined about it, I will not do these things. Because my brain will always bring me. I like working on front, so my brain is always going to bring me to my computer and making progress on something that I enjoy. And so the fact that my biggest takeaway is no matter how much you care and how much you love your job, it's just a job. At the end of the day, you should really think about, when you're 80-year-old and you're about to die, what are the things that you will remember? And of course, I hope that your professional life is one of the things that you will remember, but it shouldn't be the only thing that you remember. And I think the amazing relationships that you build and, the experiences that you live that really helped you be who you are things that you will remember. And so just prioritize this, because otherwise there will never be a good moment to prioritize it.
I love that. And it's the power of discipline in your work, in your life. So you're one of those people that really believes in work-life harmony.
Yeah, I do.
All right. Yeah.
I believe in it, and I try to live that way.
Yeah. Mathilde, thank you so much for joining us. If you have not heard of Front, if you haven't downloaded Front, it's actually the best collaboration email app that I've ever used. And I actually still use it. If only we could afford it here in Ghana. It's so expensive when you go to the enterprise, but it's an amazing tool. And as far as someone that I've been keeping track of in the future workspace, but though, thank you for all of the work that you do and the movement that you're building. I think that the Front platform, as well as your leadership, has been amazing, and it's transformative, especially during times like this in the world.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I will obviously, as you know, there are things we do well, there are things we do less well. I think what matters is as I said, like just being super honest with ourselves about the thing that we do well, and just being proud of them and celebrating them, and the thing that we don't do well, then just making sure that we're honest as well and learning from them and getting better. But really appreciate the
Of course, Mathilde. We should have you on a future episode. What do you think?
I'm down.
Love it. Talk to you soon. Bye, Mathilde.
Bye.
Boom. That was Mathilde Collin, the CEO of Front. Isn't she amazing? I freaking love her. The queen of SaaS herself. I'm really excited because we just talked to two amazing people, Aubrey Blanche and Mathilde Collin. Make sure to check them out. They're phenomenal. They're doing amazing things, and be part of their movement. Be part of their leadership. Get involved, get hip, get familiar. And more importantly, sign up for our guideapp.co beta. If you're interested in our beta, we are gradually expanding our beta to our amazing customers. We already have some marquee customers who work with LinkedIn, Microsoft, you name it, Google. They're onboarded. So definitely check out guideapp.co. Please let us know what you think and join our movement and be part of our ecosystem. All right. With that said, y'all, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Truly appreciate you all. I hope you're enjoying yourself this lovely Wednesday. Please don't be a stranger. If you have any thoughts on guests that I should have on a future episode, please let me know. I'm completely open to suggestions. Our platform is your platform. All right. With that said, y'all, peace, love, and abundance. Talk soon.